She handed me divorce papers the day before our anniversary, grinning like she'd hit the jackpot. When I signed without putting up a fight, she called me weak. 3 months later, I inherited $10 million from the same uncle she always said didn't matter. Then she showed up at my bank with a lawyer in tow, still wearing that same satisfied smile. My name's Elliot Mercer. I'm 60 years old, and for the last 36 years, my life has mostly been a wrench in one hand and grease under my nails. I built my plumbing business from scratch, one leaky faucet, one clogged drain, one busted pipe at a time. I was married to Olivia for 38 years. We raised 2 kids together, Mason and Hannah, and for a long time, I honestly believed I was doing everything a husband was supposed to do. I paid the bills on time, I kept my word, and I showed up whenever I said I would. The only time I ever raised my voice was when some rookie was about to fry himself trying to use a wet drill around live wiring. Turns out, none of that mattered. The envelope came on a Tuesday. No big emotional speech. No dramatic showdown. It was just sitting on the kitchen counter beside the coffee maker when I got home from a job in Riverside. Thick manila paper, the high-end kind attorneys use when they want to remind you that you're already screwed before you even open it. Olivia stood near the window with her arms crossed, wearing that navy blazer she bought last spring. The one that cost more than my monthly truck payment. "You should read that," she said, not even bothering to look at me. Her tone was cold and flat, like she'd practiced it. I picked up the envelope and felt how heavy it was. Not because of the paper, but because of what it meant. Way too many pages for anything good. "What is this?" I asked. "Divorce papers," she replied, finally turning to face me. "I filed yesterday, the day before our anniversary. Honestly, it just felt cleaner that way." My hands went numb. The envelope might as well have weighed 50 pounds. "Cleaner." "I'm serious," she went on. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Elliot." She smoothed her blazer like she was straightening out a wrinkle in her life. "I've kept everything simple. Fair division. No fighting. Just sign, and we can both move on." I stared at her, really stared. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman I met at a community fundraiser back in 1988. The one who laughed at my terrible jokes and didn't care that I smelled like copper, pipe dope, and sweat. That woman was gone. The person standing in front of me now looked polished, distant, like she'd been working on this version of herself for years. "You've been planning this," I said. "We've been drifting for a long time," she answered without hesitation. "You know it." "I know it. This is just making it official." I opened the envelope and skimmed the first page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Then my eyes landed on the date. Filed one day before our 38th indie anniversary. Meanwhile, the reservation I'd made at Romano's was still saved in my phone. And the bracelet I bought her, because I thought we were still worth saving, was wrapped up and hidden in my toolbox in the garage. "I'm not going to fight this," I said quietly as I set the papers back down on the counter. Olivia blinked like she couldn't believe what she just heard. "You're not?" "No." I reached into the drawer, grabbed a pen, flipped through the pages, and started signing. One page after another. Every clause. Every sentence. Every reasonable, legal phrase that really meant, "You're not even worth arguing over." My hand didn't shake. I didn't hesitate. And for some reason, that seemed to bother her more than anger ever could. "That's it?" she asked. "You're seriously just going to sign?" I looked up at her. "What were you hoping for, Olivia? Begging? Crying? Me falling apart?" I gave her a steady stare. "You made your decision. Now I'm making mine." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't say anything. I finished the last signature, slid the documents back into the envelope, and handed it to her like it was nothing more than a receipt. "I'll be out by the weekend," I said, walking past her toward the stairs. Behind me, I heard her let out a breath, something caught between relief and disappointment. But I didn't turn around. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing whatever reaction she was fishing for. By Friday, I was gone. The apartment I rented wasn't anything to brag about. Third floor walk up on the east side of town, sitting above a laundromat that droned until midnight and a little corner store that sold scratch-offs and stale coffee. The carpet was worn down in spots. The refrigerator rattled like it was on its last leg, and the bathroom faucet dripped no matter how tight I cranked it. Which was pretty ironic, considering what I do for a living. But I didn't fix it. I left it dripping on purpose. Because that sound reminded me I was still alive, still here, still breathing. Truth is, I'd packed 2 weeks before Olivia ever handed me those papers. Call it instinct. Call it common sense. Either way, something in me already knew what was coming. But when your wife starts coming home smelling like cologne that sure as hell isn't yours, you learn to prepare for the worst. So I started putting together a backup plan without saying a word. 3 duffel bags, 1 cardboard box packed with tools, my dad's old recliner, and a lamp I grabbed at a garage sale 15 years ago. That was all I took. Everything else, the house, the furniture, the whole life we built piece by piece, I left behind. Not because I was trying to be some saint. I left it because I didn't have the energy to wrestle over things that didn't mean anything to me anymore. Mason called the day after I moved out. My son's voice came through the phone tight and shaky, like he didn't know what to believe. "Dad, what the hell happened?" he asked. "Your mother and I are getting divorced," I told him, setting down the wrench I'd been using to tighten the kitchen sink in my new place. "She filed. I signed. That's all there is. That's all there is," Mason repeated louder now. "You were married for over 20 years. You don't just walk away like it's nothing." "I didn't walk away, son," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Your mother did. I'm just respecting her choice." There was a long pause on the other end. Then his voice came back sharper, harder. "Mom said you gave up. She said you didn't even try to fight for the marriage." I closed my eyes and felt that familiar burn creep into my chest, the kind of frustration that doesn't explode. It just sits there like a hot coal. "Of course she did," I said under my breath. Then I spoke louder. "Mason, your mother can tell whatever story she wants. I'm not going to go back and forth with her. You're 10 years old. You'll figure out what's real in time." "So that's it?" he pressed. "You're just done?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm done." He hung up without even saying goodbye. I stood there in that cramped little kitchen, phone in one hand and wrench in the other, and I couldn't stop wondering how long it would take before he realized I wasn't the villain in this story. Hannah called 2 days later. My daughter's voice was softer, more controlled. She worked at a law firm downtown, so she'd seen breakups and legal messes like this plenty of times. She understood the process, even if she didn't understand the heart behind it. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked. "I'm all right, sweetheart," I said. And to my surprise, I actually meant it. Hannah hesitated. "Mom's telling people you just quit, that you didn't even want to talk about it." I let that sit for a second. Then I asked, "And what do you think?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think there's more to this story than what she's saying." I couldn't help it. I smiled a little. "Smart girl," I said. "Always have been. And you're right." Then my voice softened. "But this isn't your 10 to carry. This is between me and your mother." "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I love you too, Hannah," I told her. "More than you know." After she hung up, I sat back in my father's old recliner and stared up at the water-stained ceiling. The drip from the bathroom faucet echoed through the apartment, tapping out its own slow rhythm. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Because I knew something Olivia didn't. I knew how to wait. Olivia, on the other hand, wasted no time building her story. Within a week of me moving out, her social media turned into this perfect, polished scrapbook of freedom. She posted pictures from the salon she managed, smiling behind chairs, surrounded by clients and expensive products, like she was thriving. Then came the wine-tasting photos downtown, where she posed with people I'd never met in my life. One post showed her standing on somebody's boat, holding a champagne glass up like she'd just been crowned queen of the world. The caption said, "New chapters, new energy." The comments poured in like a standing ovation. "You deserve this. Finally living your truth. Look at you glowing." I didn't comment. Didn't hit like. Didn't react. I just watched from far away, the same way you watch dark clouds building on the horizon. You don't sprint into a storm. You just make sure your foundation is strong enough to handle whatever's coming. What she didn't post were the cracks starting to show behind the scenes. Hannah mentioned it during one of our weekly coffee meetups. Olivia had been asking questions about my schedule, where I was staying, and whether I'd hired a lawyer yet. Hannah sat across from me at the diner near my apartment, stirring sugar into her coffee with this worried look on her face. "She's nervous, Dad," she said quietly. "I can tell." "Nervous about what?" I asked, cutting into a stack of pancakes like it was just another day. "About you," Hannah said. "She expected you to fall apart. She expected you to call, to plead, to beg, something. But you didn't. And now she doesn't know what you're thinking." I took a slow sip of coffee and chose my words carefully. "What I'm thinking isn't her concern anymore, Dad." Hannah leaned in and dropped her voice lower. "There's more." I frowned. "More what?" "I saw paperwork at the firm yesterday," she said. "Mom's attorney filed a motion to revisit the asset division." My stomach tightened. Hannah continued, "They're claiming you hid business income during the marriage." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "That's a lie," I said. "I know," Hannah said. "But they're fishing. They're just trying to stir something up and find leverage." I set my fork down and looked at my daughter. She was only 25, but she was sharp as a razor. She already understood exactly what Olivia and her lawyer were doing. "Let them fish," I said calmly. "They won't catch a damn thing, because there's nothing there." Hannah hesitated for a second, then leaned in. "What about Uncle Calvin?" That question stopped me cold. Calvin Whitmore, my mother's brother. The guy who built an entire plumbing supply empire out of nothing, then spent the last 10 years living like some kind of hermit in a massive mansion outside Philadelphia. We'd kept in touch all these years. I visited every few months, called on holidays, checked in when I could. Olivia always rolled her eyes whenever his name came up. She treated him like he was just some odd old man who didn't matter. "What about him?" I asked carefully. "His health," Anna said, her voice dropping lower, almost a whisper. "Aunt Eleanor said he's not doing well. And I know you've been seeing him more than you tell people." I held her gaze. "Calvin's my uncle. I visit him because I love him, Hannah. Not because I'm waiting for anything." Hannah nodded slowly. But the look in her eyes told me she understood more than she was willing to say out loud. "Just be careful, Dad," she warned. "Mom's watching you now. Like everything you do." I finished my coffee and gave her a small, tired shrug. "Let her watch," I said. "She won't notice what actually matters until it's already too late." We walked out of the diner and went our separate ways. On the drive back to my apartment, My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. "Hello? Mr. Mercer," a man said. "This is Nathan Holloway. I'm the attorney handling the estate of Calvin Whitmore. I'm calling to inform you that your uncle passed away yesterday morning." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "I'd like to schedule a meeting to go over his will," he continued. "You are listed as the sole beneficiary." I pulled over to the side of the road, parked, and just sat there gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. In one phone call, everything had changed. 3 months. That's all it took. 3 months between Olivia filing for divorce and a call that would rewrite my entire future. 90 days of silence. 90 days of letting her believe she outplayed me. 90 days of watching her build some shiny new life, thinking I'd be stuck looking in from the outside forever. 90 days of me doing what I always did, running my routes, fixing broken pipes, replacing water heaters, keeping my head down, and waiting. Nathan Holloway's office was in Center City. 14th floor of a building that smelled like polished wood, old money, and people who never had to worry about rent. The man himself looked like he belonged there. Late 50s. Gray hair. Expensive suit. The kind of attorney who billed by the minute, and made you feel like every minute was worth it. "Mr. Mercer," he said, standing up and shaking my hand firmly. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice. Please have a seat." I sat across from his desk, my hands folded in my lap, trying not to show how strange it felt being in a place like this. Nathan opened a leather folder and removed several documents, laying them out neatly like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Your Uncle Calvin was extremely specific," he said. "He left his entire estate to you." I blinked. "The entire estate?" Nathan nodded. "Yes. No conditions. No trusts attached. No complications. Everything transfers directly to you once probate clears." I swallowed. "How much are we talking about?" He slid one sheet of paper across the desk. "Total liquid assets, investment portfolios, and proceeds from the sale of his manufacturing company come to $10 million. $10 million. The number sat there between us like a live wire. I'd spent my whole life living on around $40,000 a year, crawling under sinks, replacing pipes, fixing toilets, and now I was sitting in a high-rise office being told I was a millionaire 10 times over. "The timing," I said slowly, "matters." Nathan nodded like he'd been expecting that. "I understand. I'm aware of your recent divorce. The proceedings were finalized 2 weeks ago, correct?" "Correct," I said. "In that case," he continued, "this inheritance is separate from all marital assets. Your ex-wife has no legal right to it whatsoever." My chest loosened a little. "Your uncle made sure the timing was clearly documented," Nathan added. "In fact, he had been planning this for months. He wanted it done at the right moment." I leaned back in the chair, trying to process what I'd just heard. Calvin knew. Somehow, he'd known what Olivia was planning before I even did. All those visits. Those long talks about family, loyalty, patience. He hadn't just been talking. He'd been preparing me, quietly, without me realizing it. "There's one more thing," Nathan said, reaching into the folder again. "Your uncle left a sealed letter for you. He asked that I personally give it to you." He handed me a thick envelope. My name was written across the front in Calvin's shaky handwriting. Carefully, I opened it and unfolded the single page inside. "Elliot," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then everything happened the way I believed it would. Your wife never saw your value. All she ever saw was a simple man with dirty hands and a modest income. She didn't see the strength. She didn't see the integrity. She didn't see the patience that makes a man truly wealthy. I'm leaving you everything because you are the only one who ever visited me without wanting something in return. Use this money wisely. Protect yourself. And when she comes back, and she will come back, don't let her take anything more from you. You've already given her enough. Calvin. My throat tightened. I folded the letter slowly, tucked it back into the envelope, and held it in my hands like it weighed more than the money ever could. Then I looked back up at Nathan. What do I need to do? I asked. To make sure she can't touch a penny of this? Nathan didn't hesitate. We'll establish a trust immediately, he said. Separate accounts. Legal walls. Everything documented, time-stamped, and airtight, Nathan said. By the time anyone even understands what happened, the money will be untouchable. I stood up and shook his hand. All right, I said. Let's do it. Let's get started. When I walked out of that office, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was something quieter than all that. It was control. The first contact came as a text. Short. Casual. Like we were still friendly. Hey. Heard you were at Romano's last week. Hope you're doing well. I stared at the message for a full minute without blinking. Then I deleted it. No reply. Olivia wasn't checking in. She was probing, seeing if I'd react, seeing if I'd slip. She was testing the water. And I wasn't biting. 2 days later, she tried again, this time with a phone call. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. When her message came through, her voice sounded lighter than it had in years. Almost cheerful. Almost flirty, even. Like she was putting on a performance. Elliot, it's me. I just wanted to check in. We should talk, she said. There are some things we need to discuss about the kids. Call me back. The kids were 2010 and 25. There wasn't a damn thing we needed to discuss about them. This wasn't about Mason or Hannah. This was reconnaissance. I didn't call her back. Then came the ambush. I was at First National Bank, sitting in a conference room with a private banker Nathan recommended, someone who specialized in managing trust accounts and keeping money protected. We were in the middle of talking numbers and paperwork when I caught a movement in the glass wall, like a shadow passing behind me. In the reflection, I saw it clear as day. That navy blazer. That stiff, confident posture Olivia always wore when she thought she held power. And beside her, a man in a gray suit carrying a leather portfolio. I turned my head slowly. Olivia was standing in the lobby with Travis Caldwell, her attorney. Both of them wore expressions that were trying to look relaxed, but they landed somewhere between hungry and desperate. Elliot, Olivia said, walking closer with that signature smile. The same smile she always used when she wanted something. What a coincidence. I didn't know you bank here. I don't, I said flatly. Then I looked her right in the eyes. What do you want, Olivia? Travis Caldwell stepped forward and stuck out his hand like he owned the place. I didn't shake it. He hesitated for half a second, then pulled it back smoothly, like it didn't bother him at all. Mr. Mercer, he said, I'm Travis Caldwell. I represent your ex-wife. We were hoping to have a brief conversation about revisiting the terms of your divorce settlement. The divorce is final, I said, keeping my voice calm and even. There's nothing to revisit. Travis didn't blink. He leaned into his script, professional and polished. Well, given certain changes in your circumstances, we believe an amendment would be reasonable. Fair, even. So they knew. Somehow, they'd found out about the inheritance, probably through probate filings or somebody running their mouth. The only question was whether they knew the full details, or if they were just guessing and trying to bluff. Olivia's smile widened, like she thought I'd fooled. Elliot, come on, she said. We were married for 22 years. Don't you think it's only right that we share something like this? Especially when it's family money. Unexpected good fortune and all that. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even show emotion. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a business card, and held it out to Travis. The card was thick, expensive, with raised lettering. Nathan Holloway. If you have questions, I said calmly, you can bring them to my attorney. Travis took the card, and I watched the corner of his mouth twitch as he recognized the name. Nathan Holloway wasn't some cheap divorce lawyer you hired out of desperation. He was the kind of attorney you brought in when you planned to win. Olivia's voice lost some of its sweetness. Elliot, she said slowly, you really want to do this? You want to make this adversarial? I looked at her fully now. No softness, no nostalgia left in me. You made it adversarial 3 months ago, I said, when you filed those papers, smiled in my face, and walked away with everything. I let the words sit in the air. I'm just protecting what's mine now. Her face tightened, and I could see the anger trying to break through her mask. Travis placed a hand gently on her arm, a signal to back off. We'll be in touch, Mr. Mercer, he said. Then they turned and walked out. I went back into the conference room like nothing happened, and we continued setting up accounts Olivia would never be able to touch. 2 weeks later, the next move arrived. A courier delivered a thick envelope. Travis Caldwell had filed a motion to reopen the divorce settlement. The arguments were dressed up in fancy legal language, but it was all garbage. Claims about hidden assets, emotional duress, accusations that I concealed some relationship with Calvin. It was creative fiction. Well written. Completely baseless. Nathan and I met to go through it together. He laid the pages out across his conference table like he was dissecting something dead. They're reaching, Nathan said, tapping one paragraph with his pen. This only works if they can prove you knew about the inheritance during the marriage. Can they prove it? I asked. Nathan looked up. No, I said, because I didn't know. Calvin never told me. Nathan nodded. But you visited him regularly. Because he was family, I said. Olivia refused to come after the first year. Said he gave her the creeps. Nathan scribbled notes. Good. We'll document that. Then he leaned forward slightly, eyes sharp. I also want to introduce something else, he said. Evidence that your ex-wife specifically requested the future assets clause in the divorce agreement. He pulled out the original settlement. There were Olivia's handwritten notes in the margins. And one section was highlighted almost aggressively. All future income, inheritances, and acquisitions remain separate property of respective parties. She wrote this herself, Nathan said, and she insisted on it. She wanted her salon earnings protected. I stared at the page, almost impressed by how perfectly it boxed her in. Nathan slid it closer. She can't have it both ways. Over the next week, Nathan started stacking evidence like he was building a wall. Not ordinary evidence, demolition-level proof. Bank records. Estate documents. Timeline showing Calvin's planning had started to 9 months before the divorce. Notarized letters backed up every visit I'd made. Emails proved I had no idea what Calvin was planning. But the strongest piece of evidence, by far, was a video Uncle Calvin recorded 6 months before he died. Nathan played it for me in his office. Calvin was sitting in his library, the room dim and quiet behind him. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered, but it was steady, clear, and deliberate. I'm leaving everything to Elliot, Calvin said on the recording, because he's the only person who visited me without wanting anything in return. He paused, like he was choosing every word carefully. His wife, Olivia, made her contempt for me obvious. Calvin continued. She called me outdated, irrelevant, like I didn't matter. Elliot never did that. Calvin's eyes didn't waver from the camera. He sat with me. He listened. He fixed things without being asked. That's the kind of man who deserves what I built. And then the video ended. The screen went black, and the room went quiet. For a few seconds, neither of us said a word. They can't fight that, I finally said. Nathan nodded once. No, he replied. They can't. 3 days later, Nathan filed a counter-motion. And within hours, Travis Caldwell called him. Their conversation didn't last long. Travis withdrew the motion. No hearing. No public drama. No second chances. Olivia lost before the fight even started. That night, I cracked open a beer in my apartment. It wasn't a victory drink, not really. More like an acknowledgement. Like a man closing a chapter he never asked for in the first place. The battle I didn't want was finally over. The next thing that happened hit harder. Hannah called me early Sunday morning. Her voice was tight, like she was holding back fire. Dad, we need to talk, she said. Can you meet me at the diner? 20 minutes later, I slid into the booth across from her. My daughter looked worn down, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tense, coffee cup clenched in her hands like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Mom's been lying, Anna said immediately. About what? I asked. Hannah shook her head. About everything. I stayed quiet, letting her work her way through it. I was going through old files at the firm, she continued, voice trembling just slightly. Estate stuff, probate records, and Dad, I found correspondence between Uncle Calvin's attorney and our office. My stomach tightened. What kind of correspondence? It's dated 2 years ago, she said. 2 full years before the divorce. That made my skin go cold. Hannah swallowed and kept going. It's legal questions, inheritance law. Specifically about how to protect assets from marital claims. I stared at her. So Uncle Calvin, I began. He was planning this long before Mom ever filed. Anna said. He knew what she was doing. What she was doing? I asked carefully. What do you mean? Hannah reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and started scrolling through pictures. Then she turned the screen toward me. Bank statements. Credit card receipts. All under Olivia's name. Charges at high-end restaurants I'd never set foot in. Hotel rooms in the city. And then something that made my jaw tighten. Receipts from a jewelry store. Men's items I'd never received. Hannah looked down for a moment, then back up at me. She was having an affair, Dad, she said quietly. My chest tightened. With Brandon Sheffield, Anna added. Your old business partner from the supply company. The name hit me like icy water dumped straight on my head. Brandon Sheffield. The same guy I helped get his contractor's license 15 years ago. The same guy who borrowed my truck whenever his broke down. The same guy who sat at my table during barbecues, laughed with us at birthday parties, acted like family. How long? I finally managed. At least 2 years, Anna said. Maybe longer. I found texts between them going back to before she filed. I felt my jaw clench without meaning to. She wasn't leaving you because you grew apart, Dad, Anna said, voice sharper now. She was leaving you because she thought she could do better. This divorce wasn't about distance. It was about her upgrading. I leaned back in the booth, trying to breathe through it. All those late nights at the salon. Those fake conferences that never had any real follow-up. The way she started dressing different, talking different. She hadn't been changing. She'd been preparing. Auditioning for a whole new life. One that didn't include me. Does Mason know? I asked. Hannah shook her head. Not yet. He's still defending her. He still thinks you just gave up. I stared down at the table for a second. Then maybe it's time he knows what really happened, I said. Hannah's expression tightened again. There's more. What now? I asked. Hannah lowered her voice. Mom's losing money. A lot of it. I frowned. She's drowning, Dad, Hannah explained. The salon is in debt. She took out loans against her share of the house and invested in some venture with Brandon. And? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It failed, Hannah said. Badly. She's bleeding cash. Suddenly it all made sense. That's why she came after the inheritance. Not because she thought she deserved it. Because she needed it. She's desperate, Hannah finished. I looked across at my daughter and saw the pain behind her eyes. Not just anger. Not just disappointment. It was grief. She'd learned her mother wasn't who she believed she was, and that the story Olivia had been selling the world was pure fiction. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, I said softly. Hannah shook her head, surprisingly firm. I'm not. I blinked. I needed the truth, she said. And so does Mason. That evening, Hannah called her brother. I wasn't on the call, but later she told me Mason went silent when she heard it all. The affair, the financial lies, the careful timing of the divorce like it was a business deal. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't the same. It sounded older, harder. 2 days later, Mason showed up at my apartment without warning. He stood in my doorway with his hands in his pockets, eyes heavy, like he'd aged 5 years in 40 hours. I'm sorry, Dad, he said, voice rough. I believed her. I really thought you just gave up. I stepped aside. Come in, son. We sat in my small living room, and the silence between us felt like wet concrete. Finally, Mason spoke. She played all of us, he said. Made herself the victim. Made you look like the quitter. And I bought it. You believed your mother, I replied. That's not a crime. It is when you're wrong, Mason said, looking me dead in the eyes. When you call your father weak, when he was just being decent. That one hit me. I reached over and gripped his shoulder firm. We're good, Mason, I said. We're good. My son nodded, but I could still see the anger simmering underneath. Not at me, at Olivia, at the lies, at the manipulation. The family started cracking apart along brand new fault lines. Only this time, it wasn't anger doing the damage. It was the truth. And once the truth got out, Olivia's little world, the one she'd spent months carefully polishing, started falling apart faster than she could patch it back together. Within a week of Mason and Hannah learning what really happened, Olivia's social media went dead. No more champagne pictures. No more glossy empowerment captions. No more perfectly staged posts showing off her new life. Just silence. Hannah told me Brandon Sheffield had disappeared too. Packed up and left town like a coward. Moved to Arizona without warning, no goodbye, no explanation, nothing. He left Olivia holding the bag, and the debt from their failed business venture. The man she traded 38 years of marriage for ran the second things got uncomfortable. Not long after that, the salon Olivia managed got sold to a regional chain. And when the transition happened, nobody offered her a management position. She was let go with a 2-week severance, along with a polite little letter thanking her for her service, like she was just another name on a spreadsheet. Then came the apartment. That high-rise place with the views she'd been bragging about online? It went up for lease. Turns out she'd fallen behind on rent, and she couldn't keep up with the lifestyle she'd been pretending was effortless. I didn't smile about it. I didn't celebrate. But I didn't feel sorry for her either. Hannah kept me informed, not as gossip, but because she believed I should know what was unfolding. Mom moved in with Aunt Monica. Hannah told me one afternoon while we were having coffee. She's asking everyone for money. Says she's going through a rough patch. Is she? I asked. Hannah didn't even blink. She's going through the consequences of her choices, she corrected. That's not the same thing. Mason, meanwhile, stopped taking Olivia's calls completely. The betrayal had cut too deep. He'd built his whole relationship with his mother on trust, and she destroyed it with lies like it was nothing. When she tried reaching him through social media, he blocked her. When she showed up at his office, security escorted her out. I'm done being her safety net, Mason told me one day when we met for lunch. His voice was stone. She made her bet. She can lie in it. I understood his anger. Hell, I respected it. But part of me worried about how bitterness can grow roots if you let it. Don't let her mistakes turn you into someone you're not, I told him. You can cut her off without carrying hate around in your chest. Mason sat with that for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're better than me, Dad, he admitted. I don't even know how you stayed calm through all of this. I let out a quiet breath. I wasn't calm, I said honestly. I was just patient. There's a difference. The real turning point came when Olivia's lawyer, Travis Caldwell, walked away from her case completely. Hannah found the paperwork at the firm. Just a simple motion filed with the court citing irreconcilable differences with the client. Translation? Olivia couldn't pay him anymore, and her case was garbage. And without a lawyer, without money, without Brandon, and without her kids, Olivia was finally alone with the reality she'd built for herself. Then came the letter. Handwritten. Delivered to my apartment in a plain envelope. No return address. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. But the moment I saw the handwriting, I knew exactly who it was from. Olivia. I opened it and stared at the first word. Elliot. That's how it started. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know what I did. I know what I destroyed. But I'm asking anyway. Not for money. Not for reconciliation. Just for one chance to explain. To apologize. To admit that I was wrong about everything. About you. About us. About what mattered. I threw away something real for something that only looked shinier. And now I have nothing. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just need you to know I finally see it now. I see what I lost. That was how Olivia ended the letter. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it neatly, placed it in the drawer with the rest of the legal paperwork, and shut it like I was closing a chapter. Some apologies show up too late. Not because they're fake. Not because the person writing them doesn't mean it. But because the person receiving them has already moved on. The past only matters if you're still living in it. And I wasn't. That evening, Nathan called with an update. The probate process is finalized, he told me. Calvin's estate is fully transferred. The trust is active. Everything's locked down. Good, I said. Nathan paused like he had something else. One more thing, he added. Calvin's video deposition has been officially submitted with the county as part of the estate record. I frowned. Meaning what? It's public record now, Nathan explained. Anyone can access it, which meant anyone could hear Calvin's words. Anyone could hear him talk about Olivia, about her contempt, her dismissiveness, her attitude toward family. It wasn't revenge. It was just truth. An old man's voice preserved forever, waiting for anybody curious enough to go looking. I thanked Nathan, hung up, and walked to the window of my apartment. I stood there watching traffic crawl below like ants in steady lines. My life was smaller now in square footage, but bigger in every way that mattered. I had my kids again. I still had my integrity. And I had $10 million I never expected to see, plus the peace that comes with knowing I hadn't done a damn thing wrong. Olivia got what she thought she wanted, and it cost her everything that actually mattered. Then, on a Thursday morning in November, my phone rang again. Unknown number. New York area code. I answered cautiously. "Mr. Mercer," a woman said, professional and clipped. "This is Monica Reynolds with Chambers and Associates. I'm calling regarding a claim filed against Calvin Whitmore's estate." My posture stiffened. "There's a woman named Sabrina Whitmore," Monica continued. "She claims to be Calvin's daughter from a previous relationship. She intends to contest the will." I sat up straighter like my spine suddenly had a rod through it. Calvin never mentioned having a daughter. "That's not unusual in these situations," Monica said. "She has documentation, birth certificate, letters, photographs. Her attorney is filing a formal challenge." The moment I hung up, I called Nathan. He didn't sound surprised. "This happens more than people think," he said. "Long-lost relatives show up the second money enters the picture. We'll verify her claims and protect your inheritance." Over the next few weeks, Sabrina Whitmore stopped being a name and became a real person. She was 43 years old, living in upstate New York. Calvin had a short relationship with her mother back in the early teens. When the pregnancy happened, he provided financial support, but he kept his distance. Nathan explained it to me plain. The legal question is whether Calvin knowingly excluded her, or whether he never updated the will. I shook my head. Calvin was careful about everything. Meticulous. If he wanted her included, he would have included her. The fight dragged on for 3 months. Depositions, document reviews, investigations, endless back and forth. Sabrina's attorney painted me like some greedy nephew who slid in at the end and isolated Calvin from his real family. Like I was some kind of snake. Hannah came with me to a few hearings. She sat beside me in court, calm but furious underneath it. "This is what Mom wanted," Anna said quietly afterward. "She hoped the inheritance would turn into a disaster for you." "Maybe," I admitted, "but I'm not giving up something Calvin clearly wanted me to have." Then came the breakthrough. Calvin's longtime housekeeper brought in a box of old letters. A whole stack of them. Letters from Sabrina's mother, spanning decades. Most of them had the same theme: asking for money, making threats, pushing harder every time. And Calvin's responses were in there too. Always polite, always firm. He didn't abandon Sabrina. Not financially. He paid child support. He covered schooling. He handled his obligations. But he made one thing clear over and over again. He didn't want a relationship beyond financial responsibility. Then Nathan found the one letter that mattered most. It was from Sabrina herself. 5 years old. She asked Calvin for a business loan. Calvin turned her down, explaining he had already done what he needed to do as a father, and he wasn't going to be treated like a bank. Nathan presented the letters in court like they were bricks. "Calvin Whitmore knew about Sabrina," Nathan argued. "He provided for her throughout childhood and adulthood. But he made a deliberate decision to leave his estate to Elliot Mercer, the nephew who maintained an actual relationship with him. This wasn't an accident. It was intentional. It was informed. It was Calvin's choice." The judge ruled in my favor. Sabrina's claim was dismissed. When I walked out of that courthouse, my legs felt heavy. I was exhausted, but I also felt vindicated. Not because I'd won money, but because Calvin's wishes had been respected. I asked Nathan about the damage. "Legal fees?" I said. Nathan exhaled. "Roughly $300,000. I nodded slowly. "Worth it," I said, "if it means honoring what Calvin wanted." That night, Sabrina called me directly. Her voice was tired, worn down. "I'm not calling to apologize," she said bluntly. "I believed I had a right to something." "You did have something," I replied calmly. "Calvin made sure you were supported, educated, taken care of." She didn't respond. I continued, "But inheritance isn't about biology. It's about connection." There was a long pause. Then Sabrina asked quietly, "He really cared about you, didn't he?" "Yes," I said simply. "He did." And after a beat, I added the truth that mattered just as much. "And I cared about him." We hung up without any bitterness between us. Just two people who'd fought over an old man's fortune and ended up realizing it was never truly about the money in the first place. 10 months after Calvin passed, I stood outside the Whitmore Community Center watching construction crews put the final touches on the building. A new sign had been installed out front, and the plaque beneath it read, "Leonard Ashford Memorial Center, dedicated to teaching trades and building futures." I'd used $2 million of the inheritance to make this place real. A training center for young men and women who wanted to learn real trades: plumbing, electrical work, carpentry. Scholarships for anyone who couldn't afford tuition. Job placement programs partnered with local contractors. A place where kids could build something solid with their own hands, instead of getting swallowed by dead-end jobs and bad luck. Hannah stood next to me, hands folded, eyes fixed on the building like she could see the future through those walls. "He would have loved this," she said softly. "I hope so," I answered. And I meant it. My own business had grown too. Not in some greedy way, not because I needed more money. I already had enough. But because I liked working. I liked building. I liked fixing things that other people couldn't. I hired 3 more plumbers. Bought 2 new trucks. Even picked up some commercial contracts. Not for status. Not for ego. Just because I enjoyed making something real. Mason joined the business 6 months ago. He'd spent years in sales management, wearing button-downs, talking numbers all day. But he finally admitted he wanted something different, something he could point to at the end of the day and say, "I did that." So now we work together 3 days a week. I teach him everything Calvin taught me: tools, technique, patience, and how to carry yourself like a man no matter what life throws at you. One afternoon, while we were replacing a water main, Mason finally said something that had been sitting in his chest a long time. "I'm sorry I doubted you, Dad," he said quietly. "Sorry I believed her story instead of trusting you." I didn't even hesitate. "Water under the bridge," I told him. "You're here now. That's what matters." Olivia was gone from our world after that. The last I heard, she was in Florida, working retail, starting over from nothing. I didn't feel happy about her falling that far, but I didn't feel sorry either. Some things in life are just consequences. The house we lived in together ended up sold at auction. I drove past it once, out of curiosity more than anything. A young family lived there now. There was a swing set in the backyard, toys scattered across the lawn. Life moved on. And honestly, that was the most fitting ending of all. I never remarried. I dated here and there, but nothing serious. At 60 years old, I'd learned something most people don't realize until it's too late. Solitude isn't the same thing as loneliness. My life was full. I had my work. I had my kids. I had the community center. I had my Tuesday morning coffee with the contractor guys who'd known me for years and didn't care about money, only respect. Hannah got married in the spring. After the ceremony, when she hugged me, she leaned in close and whispered something I'll never forget. "Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like." That meant more than $10 million ever could. One Sunday morning, I was reading the newspaper when I noticed a small article tucked into the local section. Local salon chain files for bankruptcy. The same chain that bought Olivia's salon collapsed. For a second, I thought about calling Hannah. Then I decided not to. Some people's failures aren't worth tracking. Not anymore. Instead, I drove over to the community center. I walked through the workshops where students were learning to thread pipes and install fixtures. I watched them struggle, then figure it out. Watched them learn the same lessons Calvin drilled into me decades ago: patience, precision, pride. One kid, couldn't have been older than 19, was fighting with a stubborn connection, sweating and cursing under his breath. I walked over, put a hand on the pipe, and showed him the exact technique Calvin taught me 40 years earlier. "There," I said when it finally clicked into place. "Feel that?" The kid's face lit up like he'd just won something real. "Yeah," he said, grinning. "I got it." "Good," I told him. "Now do it again. And again. Until you don't have to think about it." I left him practicing and stepped outside into the afternoon sun. My truck sat nearby, dented, reliable, and paid off. The kind of vehicle that doesn't impress strangers, but never lets you down. My phone buzzed. A message from Mason about supply orders. And standing there, I realized this was my life now. Smaller than Olivia wanted, but bigger than I ever expected. Built on a foundation that couldn't be shaken, because it wasn't made of appearances or ego. It was built out of skill, honesty, and relationships that actually mattered. Calvin gave me $10 million. But the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson under it. That wealth without character is just numbers on paper. And sometimes, the people who walk away from you end up doing you the biggest favor of your life. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and drove toward whatever came next. And I drove with my head held high.